Okay, so it's April 30th, 2021. You hear the trucks, people. The big beep beep kind of trucks, right? In the back over here. So you get them. You seen that with my last, what? 3 videos before this one? Yeah, but I also get them up and down through the back. So anyway, that's what you were hearing. So I want to close my door, but that door is broken and it's a big struggle just to open and close the bloody thing. But anyway. Okay, so I don't want people to worry about me. Okay, I know I was at the courthouse yesterday. Boo-hoo-hoo, right? Okay. And I kept the video very short. Well, let me tell you something, people. Like I said, I haven't cried for ShaMay. I haven't cried for Ciera. I haven't cried for Uncle John because I've been too busy fighting for them, okay? Fighting for justice, all right? Trying to hold my family together, not lose my house, although I'm finding out that, you know, it's just a matter of time. Like, you know, $1.8 million, that's all it's going to take to have the rug pulled out from underneath my feet, people. When I moved in, my landlady, $700,000. 11 years later, it's $1.8 million. The house is over there, 4 in a row. One buyer as a group, because that's what they do from overseas. Oftentimes, they come in as a group and they buy 4 houses, 6 houses, the whole fucking block, okay? I've shown you up and down how those signs go up every year, 11, 12 houses at one time, and they're flipping them like pancakes. Some of these houses sit empty, right? They don't care where the tenants go, okay? So anyway, 4 of them sold. One that I know of, like I said, was $1.5 million. My landlady's only asking for 1.8, people. $300,000 more for a rich F, you know what, right? Is nothing. It's just a drop in the bucket, okay? Because they are facilitating an immigrant population coming into Canada as the Canadian, basically born individuals or people who have been here that immigrated here 30, 40, 50 years ago, and their kids are here, but their kids were born here, people. When I went to court, I took a taxi because I brought all that stuff, right? And I was speaking to a Punjabi man, okay? And, you know, we were talking about current day stuff going on, and I asked him specifically, you know, I said, you're Punjabi. I said, what have you heard, right, within your community in terms of adverse effects as these so-called, well, I'm just going to call them analogs, are being pumped out into the community, as well as, or did he bring up the subject of India? Anyway, he said that his grandmother had gotten the analog last week, and that all she experienced was a headache for a day. And I'm like, okay, but you have to understand that people that are dying from these analogs, it's within the first 24 hours, and you can go to the CDC VAERS website, do your little research, and you can see the reports coming in. Of course, they're not official because, you know, the CDC has to investigate. But, you know, at the end of the day, there's thousands of reports, hundreds of thousands in the UK when it comes to adverse effects, right? You know, thousands, tens of thousands, pushing 100,000, if not more, in the United States, where you can actually visually see the adverse and the different types of adverse effects, as well as the deaths that occur within either 24 hours, like within a 2-hour to 24-hour period from the time they get inoculated, up to a week, or it could take as long as 2 weeks, or even in some cases within a month. And the onset of death is very sudden because a lot of people just go in to go check their loved one, their husband, their mother, their brother, and just basically find them dead, either in bed or they fell off the fucking toilet, okay? And that's just the reality of it, people. Now, obviously in British Columbia, Canada, we're not getting any of those kind of reports because those numbers that are happening here, right, are being skewed in with misinformation, in my opinion, based on those pre-recorded live streams that were restreamed at a later date. And I explained this to this Punjabi taxi driver, right? And I said, you know, I hate to say it, but I don't think your grandmother's is out of the woods yet, okay? Right? And, you know, I honest to God, I hope nothing bad happens to her. And then he brought up or I don't know if it was me or him, but one of us brought up the fact that India is having this explosion of, you know, so-called cases. And I asked him, I said, do you, like, because I asked him, like, through the grapevine, through the Punjabi grapevine, right? Through the Sikh pipeline, like, what are you hearing, right? In terms of the real news, people. Not what I'm listening to with Dr. God, Dr. Death, or whatever she is to you, but what's in the community, the ones at ground zero. What are you hearing? What are you starting to hear, right? And he basically said that he was born in Canada. He doesn't really have any family in India because they've already all migrated here. You know, he wore his turban, right? He's a Sikh, right? And, you know, the point is he's a Canadian who has an ethnic root to India, right? But outside of that, he can only go on what's being told to him by people that are going to India, which he happened to make comment on. Okay? He said, I have a friend. That's what he said. Because he said, at first, I didn't really believe in the hype, okay? In terms of there's an actual virus out there. That's, okay? But because he has a friend that's from India, but lives in Canada, and then went back to India to go visit his family, because he has family there, right? I don't know if he came back here and then came down with, we both agreed, a flu, okay? Only he made the note to say that the flu tends to keep people, it takes a little longer to recuperate, right? It's flu, it's like a flu, but it's not as fast-lived as other flus in the past. So therefore, because it takes a little longer to recuperate. So much for my cooking video, people. I'm going to cook today, and I'm going to start working on the taxes tonight. And then tomorrow, hopefully I'll have some stuff cooked up so I can just get into that paperwork with Andrew the Dragon, his stuff, right? Sort it all out so I can, you know, I have to go back to court next week. Okay, so anyway, let me get back to what I was talking about, right? Because we're hearing it from the actual horse's mouth, right? So because it took a little longer for that man to recuperate, and he was in his 30s, late 30s, right? 30s, I can't remember, but it was in his 30s. So not too old, not too young. And he caught a bug. I don't know if he caught it in India or if he caught it in Canada. The point is that he caught it, and it lingered on for about a month. It took him about a month to fully recuperate. It just kind of dragged on. Well, you know what? When Uncle John got his flu and I slept for a week, people, when I walked off after I woke up from sleeping for a week, and a couple days later I walked off to the freaking auto insurance company to insure the car so I would have a vehicle in case Uncle John got sick and I could take him to wherever he needed to go. We decided it was a good time to insure the car. Let me tell you something. I was kind of wobbling and weak when I was doing it. Okay? It took me a little while to recuperate whatever it was that gave FHA the ability to use that against Uncle John's persons, and then basically medically kidnapped him and set the stage for what we're going through today. In terms of, now it's everywhere. Whatever happened to Uncle John is happening to hundreds of thousands, millions of old people across the United States of America and Canada. Okay? And I reminded him, I said, well, you do realize that the flu has disappeared and that there is no such thing as called a cold anymore. He goes, yeah, I know, it seems kind of strange. And I said, yeah, it does, doesn't it? Right? But basically he said because his friend had taken so long to recuperate, from his experience with other flus in the past, you know, he's a little more concerned, but not extremely concerned, because his common denomination was more that the government was running with a political football than they were with a so-called pandemic, right? In other words, politics played a bigger role. Politics plays a bigger role in what the government is doing today, currently, versus what they're trying to tell us they're doing in terms of protecting the public and their health. Because, you know, he's in the pipeline, people. Right? And I mean, he's not that one guy. He's not, you know, he only mentioned one guy, right? He didn't say, oh yeah, this guy, that woman over there, you know, my friend from, you know, he just said, like, it made me stop and think. And then the subject of India came up, and I said, okay, well, what's your opinion on that? And basically, this is what he said, okay? For people that don't know, okay? Because you don't get all your information. And I reminded him of this. Okay, that just because you see a report wherever you go on the internet or on the news, TV or whatever, or here on the radio, doesn't necessarily mean that it's correct, right? Even if it's coming in from India, right? He agreed. And then he went on to say that in India, because of the numbers of people, because of the numbers, we're talking over 1 billion people, okay, 1.3 billion or something like that, throughout the whole continent, okay? He said that a large majority don't even believe in doctors. Because there are none, people. It's not, Punjab is a rich province in a poor country. That's why all the rich Punjabis come over here and build themselves a life. Okay? Right? Not all. Lots of them are poor. Right? But many of them come with money. Okay? So, but as for the rest of India, and he named the capital, right? I don't know the name. He said that the majority of Indian people from India, regardless of from where they come from and what part, in terms of Punjab, you know, Hindu, Tamil, whatever, right? Due to the number of people and lack of resources, they've basically accepted not relying on doctors to provide, I guess you could say, health care to them to the extent that the Western world does. Because the resources simply aren't there. And that's why when you see some news flash, wherever it is, saying, oh, we don't have oxygen this and medication that and this and that and blah and blah and blah and blah, it's simply because the people themselves have never really invested in it because they didn't have the resources to do so due to, you know, corrupt politicians over the years that just didn't provide those kind of services for their population. In addition to a lot of individuals themselves just get on with their own lives and live their lives and do as they want and try and survive and, you know, and make the best of what they got, and it is what it is. So, now, in terms of, I guess you could say infection rates. You know, I'm not going to get on it other than to say it's up for debate, people. Okay, anyone can crunch numbers. Anyone can skew numbers. Right? And the science is still out there in terms of there are professional people that have come forward through different groups, right, of professionals, right, that know basically the lingo of technology and, you know, just the whole 9 yards of science, right? What we're dealing with is more like a computer model than it is an actual, let's look underneath the microscope and isolate the so-called virus, right? But yet we're taking an analog, which is, again, a computer model, then it's manufactured with synthetic products to attach itself somehow, some way to a computerized virus. Basically, what I'm trying to say is more than anything, almost everything that we're dealing with here is just a computer model. It doesn't matter if it's the analog or if it's the freaking so-called virus, because nobody's actually said, here, it's under the microscope. I have a microscope here, people. I have a little better one than this. But you should be able to see whatever it is that's supposedly killing all these people under a microscope. If it was a bacteria, you'd be able to see it, right? If it was a fungus, you'd be able to see it. If it was an actual blood disease, like sickle cell or something like that, you'd be able to see the blood mutated in terms of physically be able to distinguish what's going on with the blood when it's not looking right in terms of T cells and all that other crap. Whereas this other stuff, well, there's people out there saying you can't see nothing because they haven't provided the evidence yet because it's based on a computer model. So when you hear that information, right, and you're leaning more towards it's a political agenda versus a humanitarian agenda, right? Then, you know, I don't know where I'm going with this other than he basically said that, you know, he's somewhat on the fence in regards to why all of a sudden this huge explosion going on in India in relation to what's being reported. And because he had one friend that caught something that kind of lingered for a while, it makes him somewhat suspicious and maybe a little paranoid to catch it too. However, he was convinced that whatever is going on leans more towards being political. But I don't think he fully understands the ramifications around those politics, because I had to remind him that many of his friends and family in Canada right now are losing their businesses, are losing their homes, right? And he agreed that a lot of people are suffering, okay, because of, I guess you could say, misinformation that hasn't been cleared up yet by the government because it's too busy pushing the envelope to get those needles in the arm without taking any responsibility for the consequences around those actions in terms of enforcement, right? So, okay, I'm supposed to be cooking. This was supposed to be a cooking video. I got chicken I took out half and half, cut half. 2 days ago, it needs to be cooked up. Yesterday when I came from the court, I just ran into Nestor's for a little bit, bought myself some chicken liver, because I give a liver, whether beef or chicken liver, to Amari because it's good for his cartilages and his bones and his blood, and he'll eat it, right? So I'm going to fry them up and then put a little bit into jars because I actually give it to him quite regularly. And then, I don't know, I really shouldn't be in the kitchen, you know. I should be playing lawyer right now, right? But I have to, you know how I woke up this morning, people? Okay? I fell asleep on the couch, okay? I woke up, and just as I was coming out of my sleep, the dream that I was dreaming was Ciera was in it, for whatever reason, and social workers hovering around, trying to disrupt my life. But Ciera was there. I don't know how Ciera got in there, because I'm feeling insecure, right? Because yesterday when I was at the courthouse, okay, I mean, I broke down at the court registry, They want to talk about being embarrassing. Well, I was standing there practically bawling like a baby as I was trying to talk to the court register, right? To that young man with his supervisor standing there intimidating. Now, whether it was being intimidated with the, what is it called? The librarian. No, you can't come in unless you wear that the whole time or you wear a mask. That's it. You don't get a choice. It's mandated. And I'm, okay, so I just said, fine, I won't come in. And then I said, can I come back another time? She said, yeah. Okay, so if I need to go back, we know I can go back, but we know I can never really go in, right? Right? And then I go downstairs, right? And I'm standing there to go to the court registry, right? And then who comes up? The sheriff with a freaking bug can. Like, he literally had a can in his hand saying, we need to clean up this area or something like that, right? And I'm like, we need to clean up this area, right? And he's got a can in his hand, right? And then he goes on, oh, you're too close. So, I mean, obviously, he's going to start spraying, right? Because I'm like 2 feet too not far. They want you 6 feet apart. Why, people? I got proof that energy weapons exist, okay? They are controlled through a fucking joystick, right? When we think of all this mass die-off in India, we need to stop and think about the mass die-off of birds flying through the tree and then through the air and then suddenly just all dropping dead, basically at one time, flapping their wings until they finally kick the dust. Some die faster, some take a little longer, but nobody's going anywhere. The whole flock is dead. They've done it with cows in the fields. They've done it with elks in the fields. They've done it with fish in the sea. Okay, for anyone to stop and think that they weren't, I'm going to start testing these weapons, these energy weapons, these sonar weapons, whatever weapons that they've, laser, sound weapons, I don't know, right? But for them to stop and think and say that they were never going to do it on humans, they need to wake up and smell the coffee. Okay, that's my opinion. Because it's that simple, right? So he wants me to stand exactly 6 feet away from somebody that's going to go in. I'm 4 feet. I'm just standing there, minding my own fucking business. I've already been basically kicked out of the library, unless I conform. Just because she got comfortable being muzzled, having a mask, breathing at whatever capacity less than what she should be, right? It doesn't mean that I have to conform to that and be like her. Okay? But whatever, right? I'm not here to fight you anyway, right? So now and then he comes with his fucking bug spray can. Well, we need to clean up this area. And I'm like, I'm looking, right? I'm looking in this area and I'm like, well, what is there to clean up? Right? Clearly, he was targeting me, people. Because as soon as he came, said that, he looked, right, I'm looking, he goes, you need to stand, oh, well, no, you need to stand back. Oh, she can go in now. And then he put his fucking focus on me and said, well, where's your mask? And I'm like, right? Blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah. And then he wants to see my mask exemption. And I'm telling him, well, I shouldn't really have to give it to you. Oh, but I've never seen one before. Try and smooth it over, right? Okay, no problem. I'm not trying to hide it from you, right? Right? So I let him see it. He's looking and he's looking and it's on a piece of paper. It's like a prescription, right? The last thing that my doctor gave to me. I don't have a doctor anymore, people. And when I get back to court and I'm in front of a fucking judge, I'm going to remind them that I've lost my family doctor because of this shit. In terms of what the government has been doing with my family, right? So anyway, he's just looking, right? He's dragging it out. He's dragging it out as long as he can hold that little piece of paper. It's almost like he wished he had one himself. Or he was a crossbred of something that it wouldn't matter whether he had one or not because he was so conditioned with his bug spray and his mask, right, to be a drone. Nothing more than a drone, right? He either wanted to have one himself or he was simply a drone. and he was trying to figure out how to fuck me over, and he couldn't. So anyway, he relaxed. Okay, I'm sorry. I just have to see for myself. It was my supervisors. He blamed it on the supervisors, people, which tells me they're following me in the court through their little spyware. And if they're not following me through the court with their little spyware, what else are they following me through the court with? Okay? So, you know, he blamed it on the supervisors. You know, he had to protect his job, right? Before he would protect me. Okay, no problem. So now that's twice in the space of what? 20 minutes? Half an hour? Between upstairs and downstairs? Right? And then I go in, I get to the court registry, and as people, and this, it's like weird, people. It is so weird. As I'm standing there, and people are, you know, at the court registry, and they leave, a girl comes out of nowhere. I finally figured it out. She was sitting on a chair. This girl was getting paid, literally, to sit on a chair and wait for people to leave the court registry so that she could go up behind each and every person and spray down the counter and then run back to her chair and sit and wait for the next person to come to the you know, counter and then leave, and then she would do that again. And that's all she did. That's all she did. That's what she was getting paid for. I wonder if she's getting a pension plan for that. Seriously. Okay? So, you know, I get there, and by this time now I've been, you know, I mean, I know I was not attacked, but I was intimidated. I wasn't intimidated. It was a subliminal gaslighting kind of intimidation. Right? And I'm already feeling insecure, people. I'm already not feeling that well. I'm already overworked, right? You know, I'm already trying to prepare myself to be even overworked more, especially with the cognitive end in terms of reading legislation and you know, having to write things or try and understand things. At some point, I'm going to have to talk. And then I'm going to rattle some nerves, make some faces maybe go fucking red, right? Because you know I'm going to cite something when it comes to the Criminal Code of Canada, right? In terms of, no, you're a judge, call an investigation. You guys didn't do it last time, but you certainly can do it this time. And being that the government is standing right there with their lawyer, there's no reason for not to do it. There's none, absolutely none, because technically it really should be the government to clean the swamp, not Fraser Health, because Fraser Health is the swamp. And other health authorities. So anyway. So, of course, by the time I'll finish this, right? This little story. So now that I'm there, and because the young man, right, you know, he's not that old, right? You know, he's personable, right? He was helpful the first time I was there. I was actually happy to see him when I went there yesterday because I felt like I was somewhat connected to something fucking normal and positive, right? You know what I mean? I kind of felt a little safe, right? Not safe, but, you know, I felt like I could trust him just even a little bit, right? To give me, you know, some guidance through his experience of dealing with this paperwork that comes through his freaking, right, every damn day, right? Because I'm not getting it from the library. I can't get it from a lawyer, right? Right? Can't ask the government to do the right thing unless you take him to court, and even then you have to fight for it. But who's standing there? The supervisor. I wouldn't say she was glaring at me, but she was definitely looking at me hard. And that's why I kind of looked at her and like, well, who? Yes? Like, right? And then he jumped in. Oh, well, that's my supervisor. And I'm like, okay, well, here we go again with the old fucking okie dokie shit that was going on in fucking Vancouver. Right? But, you know, I didn't want to get offended, right? Because obviously I'm the oddball out without a fucking mask. Even as I'm trying to use this little Garth Gator crap there for a bit, right? And I just told her, like, don't get rid of this guy. He's a great employee. Like, he's a keeper. He's personable, you know, he's friendly, he's helpful, right? You know, but by that time, people, because it was already, you know, right? Then she leaves. Now okay, so I stood up for him, basically, this is what I'm saying, right? I stood up for him. It's like, you got no reason to be around this guy. He's a great guy, doing everything he's supposed to be doing, right? You know, if you're trying to prevent him from doing something, maybe that's what she was trying to do. I don't know. I just know that she was there for no reason other than to intimidate, okay? So after she left, you know, once I said what oh, that's nice, okay, and she took her cue, and she left. Well, then it was on to business. And I'm like, okay, this is what I've done. I went to the library. I went to the trial registry, right? Blah, 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 blah. You know, I think I might want to do it this way, blah, 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 blah. So he prints out a form. But by this time, people, I'm starting to fucking bawl. I'm literally crying in between my, not that kind crying, but standing there trying so hard to hold back the tears as I was like reiterating what I had just went through in terms of, I remember in my head what I need to do when I go home so that when I come back, right, I can't come back on Monday because I can't go in front of a master on Monday. It has to be Tuesday or Wednesday. Okay, at that moment, I was thinking to maybe take it and try and get the fees waived. Okay, but I'm bawling in between. I left there crying. I went outside. By that time, I wasn't crying as much. I cried more at the court registry than I did while sitting on those steps. Okay, because when they come, I can't stop. So I have to keep talking. And the more I talk, right, sometimes they just come more, right? And I'm like, well, this is going to be a great ride. But you got through it, and you're going to keep getting through it, okay? So I don't want you to worry about me. Well, that's what I'm trying to say. Don't worry, okay? You know, I cleared off. I'm feeling actually pretty good right now. I cleared off my counter here. I got this all figured out. And that's my little cast iron pot that I got. Finally, it took like 3 months in the mail. It must have got lost or something. I have other ones for when I make that rocket stove with Audrey. Oh yeah. So okay, so I leave. I'm on the steps, right? I'm on the steps. I do my little video. You see a few tears. I cried most of them. They really started coming when I was talking to that guy. Just, you know, trying to get everything in my head so I knew what I had to do when I got home. And then I have to make a decision as to what I'm going to do when I go back. I kind of know what I think I might do, but I'm not going to make that final decision until I sort out Andrew the Dragon's paperwork and my paperwork, which I'll be doing this weekend. Just to jog my memory of that whole experience, right? Because I don't know if I want to repeat that experience. And honestly, I don't understand what happened and how it happened outside of maybe I should never have put in that waiver of application the first time around, which I'm thinking maybe I did. And that's how I ended up with a master. And that's how they ended up screwing me over. I don't know yet. So I'm sitting on the steps, and I'm talking to you guys now, right? On the camera, and I'm trying to calm myself down, right? I'm looking around, and I'm thinking, where can I set up shop? You know, plant my ass with a little sign, please help me, right? I need help. And if I get a little petition going, I'll put, please sign the petition. And I'm like, well, that's great. You're just going to draw attention to yourself. As if you don't need more attention, right? All you have to do is walk into the courthouse and get attention. Now you're out in the freaking courtyard, you know, attracting people, and there's going to be more people coming, and then they're going to, what are you doing out here? You're not allowed out in the courthouse steps. So I thought I'd go back and talk to the sheriff, right? To just make sure that I could do that before I planned to do it. So I go back to the, you know, entrance, And I said, excuse me, can I ask you a question? He goes, yeah. And I'm like, okay. I said, well, you know, can I go out there somewhere and have a little sign saying, please help me, right? And, you know, I mean, you can still see I was a little teary-eyed, right? But I'm not crying now. I'm like just the remnants left over of it, right? I'm trying to compose myself, right? And he goes, oh, well, why? And I'm like, well, because I need help. I don't have a lawyer, right? And it's really hard what I'm doing. And he goes, oh, you know, we can give you, you know, phone number for this, the phone number. And I'm like, no, none of that works for me. I can't do pro bono that way. You know, I can't go really necessarily through the Access Justice Center because, you know, they kind of screwed me around there too. You know, they're not necessarily polite, right? And that's a long way to go and just whatever, right? They don't have patience with you when you go back. First time, maybe they'll help you, but the second time you go back, they just, right? They just brush you off. And if I'm not wearing a mask, God forbid, you can only know how I'm going to be treated there, right? And because people have changed, there's something wrong with people now. They're all coming in with their fucking cans of bug spray. So anyway, he said, long story short, he said, yeah, that they had no jurisdiction for outside, only inside. And I'm like, okay, well, that's good to know. Now, that doesn't rule out the cops coming and harassing me. It just means that the sheriffs won't come outside and harass me. Okay? And then he says, well, why don't you go to social services? Because I think he assumed that I was there for, you know, child custody or something like that. Right? Why else would you call social services? And I'm like, well, no, I don't qualify for legal aid. And this has, you know, this is lawsuits, right? I'm suing my government. He goes, oh. And I said, yeah. I said, you're a sheriff. I said, you know, you're a crime fighter. Right? I said, that's what you do, right? He goes, well, no, not really. And I'm like, well, I have a sheriff friend in the States. He goes, yeah, they're different though. You see, the guys in the States, they actually fight crime. I guess the guys out here, I don't know what they do inside the courthouse, but that's their jurisdiction. But even still, I'd like to think that I left the impression in his mind that he fights crime in the courthouse, in the halls, you know, in his jurisdiction. If you're not a sheriff out in the community fighting crime, the least you could do is fight crime in your jurisdiction within the courthouse that you work in, so that you can stand with your brothers in terms of being a sheriff, right? So I hope I left him with that impression by saying, well, you're a sheriff. I know you're going to, you know, either or a sheriff is a sheriff is a sheriff, and you're going to stand for justice, basically. That's basically what I said. And then I thanked him. Then I pretty much left after that, right? So, of course, you know, I pass out on the couch. I wake up, and you know, social workers and Ciera and, you know, Mari and, right, you know, and I'm like, yeah, because I'm waiting, seriously, if it's not my landlady who's going to pull out the rug from underneath my feet because she makes, you know, 110% profit on this house after I've lived here and lost three loved ones and basically gave up my life just so that I could have a fucking yard for it to be ripped apart now by some rich individual from God knows what country buying up the whole block and then just say, you got X amount of time, get out. We don't care where you go. Just get out. And then come with a bulldozer and then just mow everything that I've done. You know, that's depressing. And then if it's not that way, you know, the government, you know, I'm telling you, I'm going to call them for a trial, people. And what? They're not going to want to go for a trial, so they're going to send in the social workers because that sheriff said, well, call the social worker, they'll help you. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not what the social worker, there's no social worker that can help me with taking my government to court. That's not what I'm here for. Right? But it's already fucking with my psyche in terms of giving me nightmares because I'm waiting for something bad to happen to derail me from towing that line. Right? So, with towing that line, Tammy, I know you offered me $200 to pay to file for the trial. Okay? Look, don't worry about it. All right? I should have $200. I have it. That's all I have. Right? I don't have anything extra because I went off and I made the mistake. And no, I did not make the mistake, people. But I went off and I bought electrical cords so I can work on the yard. Do, little cuckoo. But, you know, we've been on it for so long. I know I want to see the end result. And I know that the people that kind of pay attention to that stuff, you know, throughout the years, they want to see the end result. Even if it's just for a little while. So I don't have no regrets buying electrical cords or a weed whacker, so it makes it easy for me to go around and just, you know, make the yard look nice throughout the summer or whatever, right? But at the end of the day, I do have just enough people to bypass the master. Because I'm thinking now, if I do it through a master, I am setting myself up for exactly what has already happened with Fraser Health. I just didn't see it because I've never been through it. But now that I've been through it, and after I organized the papers and really get a good look at what they did and how they did it, it's going to be, I think, much harder for them to throw it out of court through a trial. Because now I'm going on my memory with what happened with Amari. See, that's how Amari comes into my dreams, right? Because I'm desperately trying very hard how to figure this stuff out. And when we were going to trial with Amari, right? The opponent couldn't back out. They called a case conference and tried to settle out of court, right? But my lawyer and we disagreed. I disagreed. No, we're going to trial. And then eventually the second trial date, he just didn't show up. The first one, he showed up with nobody except his sister, and that was it. No lawyer, nothing. The second trial date, because, you know, he didn't have a lawyer, right? He thought he could work it out with my lawyer, and it didn't happen that way, and we booked another trial. He just didn't show up. But I did do one case conference with him. They were trying to avoid the trial. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing this. No, it needs to be discussed and dealt with as a whole and not little pieces of this and pieces of that. Well, it's the same thing with the government, right? So I get home and she said, what happened? And I'm like, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, well, you should have just paid the $200 and filed, because she just wants me to get on with my life, right? And, you know, and I'm like, oh, no, I think I'm going to go back and do this. But, you know, people, the more I think about it, I think I'm just going to go back and file for a trial. And then I would suspect they'll call me in for a case conference. I don't know how they can get away with throwing it out, because at the case conference, I'm going to be requesting investigations and for the government to pull up files, people. Dig deep. Okay? That's their job, is to protect the public. I represent the public. My family is part of the public. We have been exploited for many, many years through corruptions within key sectors within our society. Whether they relate directly to the public union sector or not, there are key individuals that take advantage of individuals in this society, and it's our governments who are supposed to protect us from that. So anyway, that's the direction that I'm leaning in. And that's why I was crying. Because I got hit up in the library. I got hit up with the can of bug spray. And then forced to hand over something that I should never have had to do. I mean, he wasn't rude about it, but he was insistent. Right? And he had the bug spray, and he made sure to tell me he was going to clean up the area, which makes me feel like I'm insignificant and a piece of dirt. Okay? Which is completely wrong. These are supposed to be professional fucking people. Right? And that's not how you treat people. Okay, I've done nothing, absolutely nothing to those individuals, all right? And I disagree with the political agenda of the day. And just because I disagree doesn't mean that they have a right to abuse me, all right? Okay, and then I get another third whammy with that supervisor, basically staring me down, right? Just whatever, right? I mean, how many supervisors do you have to have me following me around? One supervisor told the sheriff to come and approach me, and another supervisor told another supervisor to go stand by that guy. Right? As Claire, the librarian, has obviously been spoken to in terms of, gotta stick with the mandate, otherwise you're gonna lose your job. Now, I'm gonna leave it on this note. I do have to clear out my computer in order to be able to find some hard drive space to put this on there, convert it, and upload it. But I am going to leave it on this note. With all these individuals wearing these masks, okay, and with the technology of robots and robotoids and all this other crap in full swing, where they're going to start manufacturing prototypes en masse, beginning with sex toys, sex cells. It breaks those barriers in terms of taboos, right? And they actually do. I think it's Russia where they actually have robots taking people's information and doing whatever. And the majority of people didn't even realize they were dealing with a freaking robot, okay? That's how sophisticated these things are becoming. All I can think about, people, as an ending note to this, for all these human beings that are conforming for whatever their reason is, right? I don't think they fully realize how easy it is to replace them. Like, honest to God, I don't think they realize how easy it will be, if it hasn't already happened, to replace them, or to at least begin replacing them. And being that you can't see their mouths, and if they're just running test runs on the public right now for us to even notice what's among us, and we just so stressed out we don't know, we don't notice, like how many of those individuals that actually work in that courthouse have true, real, honest to God, true job security? Right? Like, they seem oblivious to the numbers of elderly being locked up like dirty secrets and being basically abused and denied their families, among other things. Do these individuals that work for the federal government or the provincial government or the municipality or whatever it may be, where they're on government work payrolls with pension plans, building and superannuation and health benefits and all, do they honestly think that they're going to live long enough and be healthy enough and free enough and all this other enough stuff in order to reap their rewards after they're in retirement years, as they enforce basically tyranny to some degree, right? Just in order to have those rewards in retirement? What makes them think that they're immune to not being treated the same way if they're not replaced in that interim of a period of 10, well, we'll just say 1 to 20 years? Why should the government pay a human being to run around the courthouse with bug spray, telling people you're too close, it's time to clean up the area, when they can simply hire not even hire, just put in a no-brainer robot to do the job basically for free? Since the government is taking us to a futuristic, got to have that vision, right? Right? They're bringing it to that vision where, And they're training us now. But the thing is, I don't get where all these jobs are coming from, even though all these jobs are being destroyed, as all these housing units out here are being created. Where people like myself, and trust me, there's a lot of myself out there, okay, will never be able to afford them, but yet they're building en masse and wiping out whole blocks. That has not stopped. If anything, it's at full speed. So I have vision, okay, all these people moving into the neighborhood, stack and pack buildings. I know in 50 years they're going to be the next slums because, those buildings within 50 years will be the lower economical end of what's right in society. But, if you have a neighborhood that will just say houses 10,000 people, and then you kick out the 10,000 to move in 100,000 into the same square footage, but there are no jobs, people can't go anywhere, grocery stores are shutting down, so on and so on and so on and so on. Everybody has to social distance. I'm like, how are they getting their money? How are they living? How are they sustaining themselves? How are they going to feed themselves? How are they going to pay their bills? What is their gainful employment? There's only so much employment to be able to house 100,000 people in a certain amount of square footage, right? After you've already flushed out 10,000. And of course that 100,000 is immigrants coming in from wherever. I'm not picking and choosing on anybody. I'm just saying that's where it's coming from, right? Because as it is, we can't even cross border and travel between provinces anymore. So if I wanted to move to Alberta, I probably couldn't, right? Because of restrictions. I'm just using that as an example. I'd have to have a good reason. What, a job? As they're shutting down jobs? Shutting down businesses? Shutting down churches? Only some churches though, right? So anyway, I'm okay. I just get emotional because it's not I didn't go to school for it, people. And I am adamant for justice for Uncle John. I will be to my last breath, right? And if Uncle John gets justice, then that guy running around, assuming that he's a real human being, with that can of fucking bug spray, gonna spray a 4-foot radius because I happen to be 2 feet shy of a so-called order, right? That really is based on a computer model versus on real science, which makes me question what's behind the mask in terms of if they wanted to fool the public and phase out human beings and replace them with a cheaper model that doesn't cost them anything outside of general maintenance once a year in terms of changing some fucking fuses. Just open it up and change the fuse like a stove, right? Like, people need to wake up, really, seriously, and ask themselves what they're fighting for, right? Because if they think that they're going to be able to, like that sheriff, it would be nice for you to have a nice, peaceful retirement. Really, right? You work all those years protecting the courthouse, you deserve that. But that's a long fucking road because he wasn't that old, people. And at the rate we are going, I'm just wondering if he's even going to make it to the end of the road, honest to God. It's so easy to replace, to be replaced. And over the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to mark my words. You're going to see that if it's not already walking among us. Like I'm going to end it on this note. Some of these robo-cops with their masks and their face shields and their war armor, right? Going into protests and grabbing people and just doing whatever these guys are doing. Honestly, they're too covered up to be authentic in terms of they're just too covered up. They're covering up something. They're trying to hide something. They don't want you to see what you're actually dealing with. So keep that in mind with these masks. Okay? You know, they haven't quite perfected. I'm sure they have their hybrid models that work really, really well, right? But they're not as cheap to manufacture as they would like them to be. So there's probably some flaws in there where, you know, they got to kind of keep it hidden, at least for now, right? In terms of what we're really dealing with. And if these individuals really are human that are behind these masks, running around with fucking bug spray to clean up the fucking area, you know, well, obviously, they see me as a bug, and only a robot would see me as a bug, or a fucking virus, or something that needs to be annihilated and snuffed out, okay? Only a robot, only something that works on a very low IQ. Even though it can process things, it doesn't have an IQ, okay? All it has is a program.